Okay.
I have 3 questions from the final that I copied and pasted into a Word document that I was going to go over today. I just changed the numbers. So I kind of think all 3 of these are worth 8 points apiece. The whole final is 150 points. So these questions would get you almost 25 points if you got them all right. And so that'll give you a good chunk of the exam to feel comfortable with. And then some of them are just like matching questions, like which of these is process costing or job order costing. And since you have your notes, that'll be really helpful. One of them asks you to list all the budgets in order. Like we started with the sales budget in chapter 8, and then it was the production budget and that kind of thing. So some of them are very, very basic and definitional, and you can pull them right out of your notes. But there'll be several that are computational, so just be prepared for that.
Okay.
All right, let's jump into the questions then. I'm going to share my screen with you. And the way I have this Word document set up, can you see my screen right now? The Word document?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, oh yeah, now I can see it.
Okay, I was going to say it had that Zoom thing over it, but.
Yeah, that went away. We're good.
Okay. So this is a 4-parter. It looks like it's a multiple choice question because it says A, B, C, D down at the bottom when you get to it on the exam. But it'll say essay as the question type. So those you're going to have to like type in a text box. So one thing I sometimes recommend to my online students is to maybe have Word or Excel open, and then you can copy and paste in there, because typing in a text box is sometimes frustrating, or write it out on a piece of paper and then just type your answer. So this goes back to chapter 2 and 3 when we had to calculate a predetermined overhead rate. Remember, a lot of our semester was spent talking about how we would actually allocate that manufacturing overhead cost. So what you're going to look for, remember, when it says predetermined overhead rate, is the estimated values. You are coming up with an amount that you think you want to allocate per, since it says in this problem up here, they're allocating it based on machine hours. So what I'm going to look for in the problem is those estimated values initially. It says here, estimated. So you're going to look at this 500,000 and you're going to divide it by the 25,000. Remember in the problem, and I said this a second ago, that word basis is kind of telling me what my divider is. So I already worked this out a little bit down here. I didn't get it all highlighted, but my formula is to take the estimated man overhead and divide by the estimated activity. So we're going to have 500,000 divided by 25,000. And that will give us the predetermined overhead rate of $20 per hour. Questions on that first part? Nope. Okay. So that's a good 2 points. And that will actually help you on some other multiple choice questions. The next part says calculate the applied amount. So applied means, I hope you remember this.
Multiply.
Good job, ladies. Excellent work. Yes. So I believe that's the first thing I typed. Yep. Apply means multiply. We're going to take that $20 and we're going to multiply it by the actual hours. So I have to come up to the problem then and find how many actual hours they worked, or the machines were run in this problem actually. Oh, I think I have a typo in here, so we're gonna have to redo our math. So I'm gonna multiply the $20. Yeah, I think it's just there. I think the math is right, but 25,200 multiplied by 20. Yep, okay. I just had a typo down here. So I took the $20 and I multiplied by the actual hours the machines worked, and then I got this 504. That is called my applied man overhead, and that would be my second answer. That would be the answer to part B there. Then the third part is going to be where you look at the applied. It says, did you over apply or under apply? Well, we applied 504, so that was still an estimated value. That's how much we thought we were going to incur in manufacturing overhead cost, because remember, the way companies do this is they bid out jobs or they work on calculating costs before they actually do the work. And so this is what they thought they were going to incur in cost, the applied amount. But what they actually incurred in cost is up here as the $478,000. So I'm going to compare those two values. So my answer to part B, the applied, gets compared to the actual cost of $478,000. And when I subtract those two values, I would find out if I have over or under applied. It says the difference between those two amounts is $26,000. All I did was subtract the applied amount of $405 and the actual cost of $478,000. Now, this other stuff I wrote in here is helpful for some multiple choice questions and to help you get the part D correct. Because when you apply the overhead, you're debiting the WIP account and you're crediting manufacturing overhead. So back in, I'm pretty sure it was chapter 3, may have been chapter 2, when we did the journal entries. When you're thinking about, remember I said when you make cookies, you first have your raw ingredients. So that's like our raw materials. And then you start whipping it. And everything in the WIP account has to be direct materials, direct labor, and man overhead. So the way we get the amount into the WIP account is we debit it. It's kind of like an asset account as part of making up our inventory. So we debited WIP for 504, but we actually only incurred $478,000. So we over applied. We put too much cost to that job. So that would be your third answer here, this $26,000. And then the final part asks, what do we do with that? How do we basically adjust that? So if we've put too much cost to the job, we're gonna have to credit cost of goods sold. Really down here, I'm gonna highlight this part in red. So the two accounts that you would adjust would end up being manufacturing overhead and cost of goods sold. The manufacturing overhead account needs to end up with a zero balance. Right now, if you looked at it, it would have a $26,000 balance on the debit side because we debited 405, but we credited 504, sorry, and we credited 478. So I'm going to credit man overhead. I'm going to debit man overhead. I think I said that backwards. And I'm going to credit cost of goods sold because I put too much cost in there. I have to reduce the cost from what I estimated. I know that was a lot to take in on that last part, but mainly the thing you're going to want to remember is that on your calculation, if you come up with an over applied amount, then you want to credit cost of goods sold. If you have under applied, you want to debit cost of goods sold. You haven't put enough cost in there. Is this kind of ringing a bell, this problem, or not really?
Yes.
Okay,
a
good.
little bit.
A little bit. Excellent. If you can follow these numbers and even just write a note about it or something, I think you'll be fine on the test. So the next one is a high-low problem. And this, a lot of students were familiar with it because it's very similar to calculating the slope of a line. Remember, it says, if I were to graph all these points, I would have a lot of dots on my graph. My scatter graph is really what we use in accounting to visualize how our costs are trending or what kind of flow they have going on. So when you initially come to your high-low problem, you're going to have to use this formula down here that I'm scrolling down to, that y equals a plus bx. Hopefully you guys remember those. things. We'll talk about them in a second. But you're going to want to calculate your variable cost, which is really your rise over your run. You want to pick out the high point and the low point of activity. So looking at this chart, I know these numbers are a little bit small and kind of hard to see. We want to pick out the high and low point, but we really want to look at, do you remember which column? If we want to look at units or total cost?
It's
units.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Good. So don't even look at this because there's actually a cost in here that is higher than the high point of activity, and you don't want to use that. Remember, the units, they are the cause of this cost. They are the driver. So I have to pick out the lowest point. Looks like June to me because there's 800 units on that one. And I have to pick out the highest point of activity on units, and that looks like September to me. So those two are going to help me calculate my variable cost. And the activity is always the denominator. I'm going to scroll back down a little bit. So my high point down here was September, and it really had $54,000. And the low point was June, and it had $10,000. So those are going to be helping me calculate the numerator. I take the difference in those two cost figures, like I'm going to type it on this formula here. 54,000 minus 10,000 is the numerator. And I'm going to divide that then, I have an extra dollar sign on there. I'm going to divide that by the difference in the activity. So September, remember it was the high activity up here of 4,800 units. I'm going to just do like that. Low of 800 units. So that would actually help me calculate the denominator. It's going to be 4,800 minus 800 units. So we got to do kind of like a please excuse my dear Aunt Sally and subtract the 54,000 on the top and the 10,000. So 54,000 minus 10,000 would give me 44,000 on the top. And the bottom would say divide by 4,000. And then I believe that is at $11 per, yes, per unit. That is your variable cost. That would be your first answer that you would be looking for. Hopefully that also seems familiar. Okay, so that is one chunk of this 8-point problem. The next part is you have to calculate the fixed cost. I'm going to put the variable cost calculated. So I'm going to also underline that. Looking back, I know this is a multiple choice question. Do you remember, either of you, what the y on the formula y equals a plus bx represents?
The total cost, right?
Excellent. Yeah, is right. Correct. Very good. Total cost. A is the fixed cost. B is the, do you remember?
Variable cost.
Excellent. Variable cost. And X is the activity. Activity. I say activity. Activia. So you're going to have to calculate then your fixed costs. And I kind of have the directions for you here that says you're going to plug in that variable cost that we just calculated. And you're also going to plug in either the high point or the low point with the X and the Y. So there's 4 things here. There's a Y, A, B, and an X. I want to leave the A as the unknown. It's the thing I'm solving for. So if I were to use, typically I like to use the low point because it has smaller dollar figures to deal with. So if I used the low point, it would say Y is equal to $10,000, right? And I would plug in, then in my formula, I would leave A alone as the unknown variable. I'm gonna say plus $11, which gets multiplied by 800 units. And then we have to do math. So I'm going to double check my calculator here. When I multiply 11 by 800, yep, 8,800 is what I thought it was. It's going to say that your formula looks like this so far. And you're going to subtract 8,800 from both sides. And when you do that, you're going to find that your fixed cost equals $1,200. So all I really did was I took that y equals a plus bx and plugged in a value, a dollar figure for each spot except for the fixed cost, except for the a. And then I used algebra to solve for that unknown a value. And then the final piece of the puzzle on this formula is it's going to ask you to calculate the total cost. So really you're going to leave y as your unknown. We just figured out that the fixed cost was $1,200. So we're going to plug that in for A. We still think that the variable cost we said was $11 per unit. And they're going to give you some kind of value for the units. So what they're really saying, and this is the bad joke I would make in class, is we don't know why. We don't know why. We don't know why we're doing this. They really are asking you to solve for the total cost when the X value, the activity, is equal to 5,000. So now you got to multiply and add. 11 times 55 or 5,000 should be, yep, 55,000. 11 times 55,000 plus $1,200. Easy? Not too terribly bad. I would say on the final, it's a majority of the major concepts that we've covered in the class. I mean, it's nothing like that we just talked about for a brief moment. It's only things that we have worked out several times in class or that we have discussed, used those definitions several times in class. So that is the final answer to that part. I'll go back and highlight. Okay, you ready for one more?
Yes.
Yes.
The last part, I'm asking you to calculate a contribution margin income statement. So every income statement starts with revenue. I'm gonna type this in red. The revenue in this problem is just going to be a multiplication thing. It's taking the number of units you sold and multiplying by how many units you sold each. I mean, how much you sold each unit for. So in this box, we take $60 and multiply it by 300 units. That would be my initial total revenue, $18,000. Next, you want to put variable cost. And that is going to be the number of units you sold multiplied by the variable cost per unit. So I'm going to run out of space, it looks like, but I'm going to try. There we go. That's fine. So this one would be $4,500, I believe. I don't trust my math.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you. And then here's the big piece, is to make sure that you call this a contribution margin, where you just subtract the two numbers that you first calculated there. I'm going to underline them. So it looks like it's 13,500. And then you're going to put fixed cost, which is given already in a total value for you on the problem. And again, these numbers are very, very similar to the ones on the test, maybe just a little bit larger but it's going to be the exact same setup of the problem. And then your net income would be where you just subtracted that fixed cost from that contribution margin. So 7,000, my total. Those are the three that I would want you to make sure you feel familiar with, because a few of these concepts bleed over into some of the multiple choice questions. For example, understanding the way variable cost works. Variable cost is something that the per unit would stay the same, like this $15 here is constant. But this total of 4,500 changes as the units change. So that is on the final. I know it comes up in a concept on the multiple choice questions, and it also is on the final. There's kind of like a drop down asking you to define variable cost. The per unit is constant and stays the same on a variable cost, but the total would fluctuate. And it actually increases directly in proportion to your units. As they increase, the total increases. As they decrease, the total decreases. But fixed cost kind of has the opposite definition. The fixed cost, its total will stay constant, but the per unit will change. And the per unit would change inversely, right? Like remember my buffet is kind of the example on that one. If I paid $10 to go eat at a buffet, I think if I get one plate of food, I think that plate costs me $10. If I get 2 plates, more activity, I think that plate costs me $5 a piece. 3 plates, $3.33 repeating, and 4 plates, because I need my dessert, it's only like $2.50 per plate, right? So the fixed cost, the total of $10 I paid doesn't change, but my analysis of my per plate would decrease as my activity increases. So isn't that fun?
Yes.
Yes. What do you girls think? Any questions on those 3 problems?
I don't have any.
Not on
No.
those, no.
Okay. Do you want to look at that chapter 10 question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So chapter 10, what I have out there right now, there is a final, so below your current module for the chapter 10 stuff, there are these 3 items I posted. I don't know if it looks exactly the same on your side or not, but this question is one, if we had been in class, that I would have gone over with you in class. I'm just going to download it so I can kind of do some marking on it and stuff. But you do have something similar to this on the final. So it's actually very similar to this, like the setup and things. So normally on your homework problems, it's more of a chart, but it's always the standard stuff at the top of your problems. So it says during July, they produced 450 units. The materials purchased and used totaled 1,950 sheets of direct material. And here is something on your problem that it does sometimes. It gave me the total cost in here. I want to make this larger. Is it kind of hard for you guys to see, or
I can see it.
you can see it okay?
Yeah.
There, it's even larger. So on this document, I don't know if you've looked very much at the formula for chapter 10, but it's kind of set up a little backwards. Remember, I taught it by starting with the A's on the left and the S's on the right. So that might confuse some of you, but it's really the same formula. It's just AQ times SP. The reason I highlighted this in purple is because they have already multiplied the AQ and the AP together. So they've kind of saved you a step. they've said the actual price that they paid in total was $254,000, $254,760. I really want to compare that to what I should have paid. So to find that, I go up here and it says you should be paying $75 per sheet that you buy. They bought 1,950 sheets. So I really need to multiply, that's what it's going to say down here, this $95, make that bigger, by the 1,000, and I'm going to scroll on down to this part right here. This is what I need to look at. By the 1,950 sheets. So I'm going to compare this 185,250 to the price that it gave me in the problem that I actually paid for the product. So really that was on your test, on your final. To get the price variance, you're going to have to do two things of math. You need to go up. Now that was just the price variance. That was only one of the 4 variances that you'll have to do, okay? They have already told you the actual cost where they multiplied the quantity and the price of the quantity together was $254,760. You should have paid only $95 per sheet, and you should have, and it says you purchased 1,950. So I'm going to need to multiply the 95 times the 1,950. That's what I did right here. And then I compare that 185 to the total that we actually paid. Any questions about the price variance?
No.
How do you feel about labeling it favorable and unfavorable? Like, do you see why this one is unfavorable?
This is the part where I always get confused.
Okay.
I mean,
So
I can
like,
understand that it's unfavorable because you paid more than you should have.
very good. That is, I was just going to say, I like to use the word should have. So your standards are kind of like your cost limitations, right? They're your budgeted amount. So I should have only paid, that is correct, like you stated it, 185-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually paid 254. So that's why it's unfavorable. Very good.
Yeah.
Now the quantity says, did I use as much as I should have? Was I efficient? Was I, like, if I'm making cookies and I am eating a bunch of the chocolate chips, I am not going to be efficient with my quantity of my materials, right? Because I'm going to have used way more than I should have because I ate half of them. So what I have to do there is I have to say, go back up to the top. You really already have this middle section calculated. That is helpful. That means I have half the work done already, right? Because we just, down here at the bottom, we said AQ times SP, what I should have paid for that many sheets that I actually used was 185. Well, how much should I have actually used is the next part of the problem. So you go up there and you say, I should have used 3 sheets. Well, it would not make any sense to take 3, multiply it by 95, and then compare it to this big value of 185. You're going to be comparing like $300 and 185. What you really need to say is how many units did I produce? 450. And how much should have gone into each of those units? 3 sheets should have gone into each. And then multiplied by the 95. So when you look down here at this section of the problem, it says, make this bigger. That you are going to take 3, multiply it by 450. That means you should have used 1,350 sheets. And if each of those should have cost you $95, this is the standard price and quantity that you should have used and paid. You actually ended up using 1,950 sheets, and that would have cost you $185. So you're also unfavorable on your quantity by, it looks like $57,000. Sometimes students like better, I like to look at this part. Here's how many sheets I actually used, 1,950. I should have used 1,350. That's a difference of 600 sheets of steel, but I need to put all of my answers in dollar figures. When you do your homework, it's never asking you what is the quantity that they varied by. You got to put that in a dollar figure by multiplying by the standard price. So if you took the difference here of 600 and multiplied by $95, you will get this exact same answer of 57,000. And some students like that. It's easier for them to visualize. But one more, the labor part. It's going to work the same way because remember the rate is really the same thing as the price, except they use an R in the formula instead of a P, and they use an H instead of a Q because we're talking about labor in terms of hours. So this is where I would start my problem. It says I actually paid 103,400 for payroll costs, for labor cost. And then I want to say, well, what should I have paid, right? I should have paid $9 an hour, and they worked 7,980. So really, all I have to do on the first for the rate variance is I have to multiply 9 and 7,980. That's going to be $71,820. That's what I should have paid. I'll scroll down and show you on the bottom here. I should have paid $71,820. I actually paid $103,400. So that means favorable or unfavorable. I know you can already kind of see the answer, but
Unfavorable.
very good, unfavorable. I paid way more than I should have. Then it's fun because that's why I have it highlighted in green up here, this AH times SR. That part we have already just calculated. We said what they should have paid was $9 an hour and for that many actual hours. But we want to find out how many hours should they have really worked. Well, they should have worked 15 hours on each unit though. So that's where this 450 comes into play. So my first step on the standard quantity or standard hours is to multiply 450 by 15. 450 units, and each of them I should have been working 15 hours on. Now I can already tell when I do that first step of math, if I multiply 15 by 450, it is 6,750. I can already tell that they were not efficient with their time, but this next answer is going to be unfavorable because they worked almost 8,000 hours and they should have only worked 6,750 hours. So this down here says when you multiply 15 by 450, it's 6,750 hours, but I want to put that into a dollar figure. So I got 60,750 was the SH times the SR. I want to compare that to 71,820 to see how efficient they were. When I subtract those two values, it is a difference of $11,070. I think for the most part, if you either, at least for the final, print this page, or if you have written it out like in your notes and you see where the values are coming from, it will help you kind of be able to plug from the final, say, oh, this is just like that problem we walked through. But I really hope students will show me as much of their work as they can, because it's, if they just give me an answer, I can't give you much partial credit, you know, but if I can kind of see where you were deriving your answer from, that will help. So. Whew, I know that's a lot. I feel like it's a lot.
Yes, it's soaking in.
Good, good. I think, have either of you done very much on the chapter 10 regular homework yet?
If not,
Okay, okay. I think you'll feel more comfortable because remember they give you some hints, like 1 through 4 will give you hints. If you watch those hints a little bit, and then, like I said, you can go back to our Zoom session from last week for 5, and I will post a 6. I think by the time you've done those things, you'll feel relatively confident with this. And this is another at least 8 points on the final. So that's a good way to make sure you have a solid portion of the final prepared for. So.
okay, that sounds good.
Well, I don't want to keep you girls all day, but definitely email me if you have questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you. This was
And
really
no
helpful.
pressure, no pressure to do the final anytime soon. I think you have till Tuesday, I think is what our normal schedule would show. But I will open it probably later today, so that I think I said on the email tomorrow, but I'm just going to go ahead and get it out there. So.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I see you guys sometime in our future. I hope our paths cross. So
Yes.
yeah, but thanks for meeting up with me today.
Yes. All right.
All right, see you later.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.